Hello and welcome to Desk to Deployment. I'm Dave and I'll be talking you through this build and paint video. In today's video I'll be building and painting a TAL Commander in XV86 ColdStar Battlesuit and their trusty shield drone. I will be painting my own custom set for this model, the Shio o Atsumeru, or the Gathering Tide. As expected, I start by clipping the parts from the sprue, removing the mould lines and then gluing it together. If you've watched any of my previous build and paint videos, you will have seen me bring this up a few times. Drill out the gun barrels. It's a small thing you can do that really finishes off the model nicely. You can use a hobby knife to score a guide for your drill, and this should make it easier to line up the holes. Another thing you may have noticed from my previous videos is that I like to go a little bit further with my basing, so I tend to build the models separate from their bases. For the model I use a spare base that I have lying around and put a small blob of super glue in the area where I want to put one of their feet. I smooth out the glue by gently blowing on it. For this model I've decided to go with a jungle/forest style base, as I feel the colours will contrast nicely with that of the model. I build up a bit of height to the base by gluing down some layers of cork, the basing piece that comes with the model, and a few stones. After the glue has dried, I cover the base in a texture paint, leaving the pile of metal and the stones showing. Once the texture paint has dried, I glue down a couple of skulls, and then using a mixture of PVA glue and water, I attach some flock. I use a grainy sand-like flock rather than the static grass, as I'm going for more of a moss-like effect. Next I attach some grit and some sand to the base, and finally some seeds that look like fallen leaves. I go back over all of the elements that I've attached with a layer of the water and PVA mixture to help make sure that they are secure to the base. Using some twigs I found lying around in the garden, I glue them to the base to simulate fallen branches, and then finally glue on some plastic plants and a few grass tufts. build phase complete, it's time to bring out the paints. First off, everything gets an undercoat of black, followed by a quick varnish on the base just to make sure everything is held in place. I then give the base a zenithal highlight and then spray the commander and the shield drone gold. Once the gold is dry, I paint the inside middly part, whatever that bit's called, of the drone black. Continuing with the black, I paint the legs, weapons, joints and thrusters. After the black, I move on to a purple. I feel that the combination of gold and purple help to give the models a more regal or noble feel. I then pick out a few parts in silver to help break up the gold and just add a bit more interest to the weapons. Once I finish with the silver, I edge highlight the purple with a brighter purple. Then I dry brush all of the black parts of the model with a grey. You could edge highlight the black parts with the grey, but this would take a very long time, and to be honest, I think this just looks great. As long as you try to focus on catching the edges rather than on the flat surfaces, you can't go far wrong. Dry brushing, I break out the old trusty Nuln Oil to go over the silver. Then it's time for a bit of detail work. I paint the lenses with a turquoise and then add a layer of bright blue before putting a dot of white in the middle to give them that glow effect. notes onto the base. I start off by using a brown ink and dotting it around where I want it to look muddy, and I also add it to the branches and the plant stems. I then go over the vegetation with a green ink. Once the ink is dry, I paint the scrap metal silver, the skulls with an ivory, and the rocks grey. I then use a green wash on the vegetation and a brown wash on the rest. I try to add the brown whilst the green is still wet so that it can blend nicely. After the washes have dried, I lightly dry brush an ivory over the base, and then using the same ivory I lightly edge highlight the leaves and add a few dots throughout the moss areas. With a bright green I go over the areas I've just picked out with the ivory. This really helps add some vibrancy to the base. Scrap metal is given a layer of typhus corrosion, and once that's dried, it's dry brushed with an orange and then the edges are brushed with a bright silver. This gives the metal a rusted look. Dot around a few patches on the base with a brown pigment to add the effect of dry or dusty ground. And then to finish off the base, like all sane people, I paint the rim of the base black. With the base finished, it's time to give the models a gloss varnish followed by a pin wash using a mix of oil paint and white spirit. Any mistakes I make whilst pin washing can easily be wiped away using a cotton bud. Once I'm finished with the pin wash, I use an airbrush to put patches of turquoise and then a small spot of white on the weapon, thrusters and the shield generator to give that glowing effect. If you don't have access to an airbrush, you can get this effect by building up thin down layers of the turquoise, bright blue and white.
After the airbrush, I snap the model from the base and carefully glue it to the finished base, and then give the model a matte varnish. For those of you wondering, I did have a spare flying base, so I used that so that the drone's base was clean. And here we have the finished model, a Tau commander ready to take the fight to the enemy in the name of the greater good. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, hit those like and subscribe buttons. Please feel free to leave us a comment telling us how we did, and don't hold back if you have any suggestions for improvements or future content. Stay safe, and we hope to see you again soon.